All right, so great things taking place. Don't forget this Saturday is going to be a huge day. Men's breakfast at 8 a.m. and care ministry at 9 or 9:30 around there. Tonight we're going to start a whole new series of messages, and it's basically talking about the time when Joshua finally leads the children of Israel over the promised land, and he's taking possession of what God said he should be taking possession of, what he promised. In fact, what he promised Abraham thousands of years earlier. But there were giants in the land. There were people that were there. And the thing that we want to point out most through this study is that the enemy is going to fight you every step of the way. He's going to try to block every promise God has ever made you. He's going to try to stop you. Yeah. And that's what this study is about starting tonight. And Pastor Scott's going to help us with that. Help me welcome Pastor Scott.
Amen. Thank you. So we're talking about driving out 7 giants that block your promise. And tonight we're going to talk about the Hivites. And the Hivites were descendants of Canaan, who was the son of Ham, son of Noah. And for a couple of years now, I've kind of felt something in the atmosphere. It's something big. I see a big shift coming. And I know it sounds cliche. It sounds like every message ever preached at the beginning of the year or the beginning of a new season. But I really believe that you're going to start seeing a breakthrough. I believe that this is the year for a harvest. And it's so timely that we're talking about new wine. We're talking about this new harvest, because I really do think that this is that year. I do think that we're poised for something big. And there may be giants to get past, but we have been equipped for the battle.
Yes, amen.
So something to consider is resistance and submission work in tandem to possess your promise. So resistance and submission work in tandem. You have to resist the enemy. You have to submit to the Lord. And that's something to keep in mind throughout this teaching, throughout all the other 6 giants. The Hivites claim to offer a good lifestyle, living by phrases such as, if it feels good, do it. Don't worry what other people think. Look out for number 1. They lived a luxurious lifestyle. Well, look good. It must look really good to some people from the outside looking in. It says that this is the enemy of our spiritual life, because our spiritual life is supposed to be a sacrificial one. 1 Timothy says the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And we like to quote that a lot, and sometimes it gets misquoted as money is the root of all evil. But you look at this stuff and you look at the Hivites living that type of lifestyle, and how the temptation might come to us. And that's going to stand in your way of possessing your promise. God already said, go in and possess the land. In fact, when the spies went out to spy out the land and see if it was good land, they came back and said, man, there's giants there. These dudes are big. We're like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in their eyes. So they already saw themselves as defeated. And we have to get past that. We have to not see ourselves as defeated. We have to see ourselves as giants ourselves. We have to see ourselves as victors. So why would God leave such a spirit? Why couldn't he just remove that desire? And I'm sure we've all wondered that at least once. I know I have. You know what, God, man, you could just remove this desire. You could remove my tendency to sin. You could remove my ability to fall short, and just kind of adjust me and make me perfect, and we don't have to go through this journey, right? It says in Judges chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Now these are the nations which the Lord left that he might test Israel by them. That is, all who had not known any kind of wars in Canaan. This was only so that the generations of the children of Israel might be taught to know war, at least those who had not formerly known it. Namely, 5 lords of the Philistines, all the Canaanites, the Sidonians, and the Hivites who dwelt in the Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal Hermon to the entrance of Hamath. They were left that he might test Israel by them, to know whether they would obey the commandments of the Lord, which he had commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Thus the children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, and they took their daughters to be their wives and gave their daughters to their sons and served their gods, little g. And if you look back when Moses in the burning bush, and God's talking to him and said, man, I've seen the trouble, I've seen my children in Egypt, and I'm going to deliver them from slavery, and I'm going to send them to this possessed land with the Hivites and the Jebusites and the etceteras, and they're going to have to fight them. And I kind of read that sometimes. I'm like, seriously? I've been in slavery all this time. You're going to send me out to battle? We live in a time where it is very much do what you want. Everything goes. Everything. When you're surrounded by that, it can look easy to just go with the flow. I mean, everyone else is doing it. Believers and conservatives have been painted to look like the enemy. So wouldn't it be easier to just serve God on Sunday? Stay quiet the rest of the week. Don't open your mouth. Don't tell people there's a better way. Don't say, hey, that's not so right. Those small compromises are what lead to big downfalls. Those small compromises lead to the entering in with of covenants with the Hivites in our lives. You compromise a little bit here, you're entering into a covenant. You compromise a little bit here, you're entering into a covenant. Before you know it, you're dwelling in their land. Remember, it said in Judges, God left these nations so the up-and-coming generations could learn how to battle. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't go to the gym to avoid a struggle. If I go to the gym and I'm going to start pushing any kind of weight, it's called resistance training for a reason. It is a struggle. It is in the struggle that you gain strength. Your immune system is the same. When you catch a cold or a flu, you encounter germs or a virus, your immune system steps into gear and is ready for battle. After your illness has passed, your body is now familiar with that disease and is more equipped to fight the next time. A champion fighter doesn't step into the ring with the world champion on his first night. He works his way up. He starts with the first fight, has to work his way up to the second fight, and I guarantee you he takes the mat all kinds of time on his way up to becoming a champion. All that resistance, all those battles give him strength. God left those other nations for the Israelites to learn how to battle, because in that battle they gained strength. In that battle they gained ability, they gained agility. They learned from these battles how to go into the next stronger battle, the next bigger battle. In your spiritual life, when you've fought a battle and you've overtaken that mountain, when you've overcome that affliction, you're now more equipped for your next battle. So what happens? You're tempted one time. You're seeing this lavish lifestyle of your friends, because I don't know about you, but not all of my friends are saved. And so you see the way they live sometimes. You see them on family outings on Sunday morning. You just got up early to be here at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And you're looking at their Facebook going, man, wouldn't that be nice one time? And so that one time can easily become 2 times and 3 times, and pretty soon, we're like, man, where's Joe? I haven't seen him in forever. Where's Tomas, man? I've seen him at the lake every Sunday morning, but I haven't seen him in a while. And it's those little compromises, those little bits, a little bit at a time, that you start entering into these covenants, you start entering into these agreements, these contracts with these enemies of your soul. In Exodus 3, 7 and 8. This is the burning bush. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and bring them up from that land to a good and large land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Sounds good. Sign me up, please. To the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. Really? So, you're going to deliver me from one thing, but you're going to set me up for battle. But the good news is they didn't go in unarmed. They didn't go in unprepared. They weren't going to go in unable to face this battle, and neither do you. When you face that battle, when you step into your promise, it's a promise. It's already guaranteed. You're stepping into a guaranteed win. As soon as you walk in and start shaking hands with your enemy and brotherly hugging them and everything and saying, man, it's cool. Let's go grab a drink. Let's have some coffee. I'll meet you at Starbucks. As soon as you start with that kind of action, you're defeating yourself. So often we're defeated by our own hand. We raise up giants against ourselves to stand in the way of our own promises. Resistance and submission work in tandem to possess your promise. So he wants to send them to war. How am I going to stand? How? The lifestyle of the Hivite looks appealing. The lifestyle of that lavishness, the lifestyle of anything goes, looks appealing. It looks really good. Not going to lie. And sometimes, we're sitting here on a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning, or you're at this meeting or that meeting or this gathering or the other gathering because it's a sacrifice. We're called to live a life of sacrifice because it's for our good, because it's to our benefit. No sacrifice goes unrewarded. No time do you step into this battle and say, okay, well, I've given this up. Maybe God will bless me. Maybe God won't. Maybe God has my back. Maybe God doesn't. You never have to worry about that. In Exodus 23:20 through 24, it says, behold, I send an angel, and pay attention to that capital A. If you're reading the NIV, it's a lowercase a. Before you, I'm sending an angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you to the place which I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. This is capital H's. Do not provoke him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. But if you indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. For my angel will go before you and bring you into the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. And here we go again, dragging these people into the face of their enemies. And I will cut them off. Other versions say I will utterly destroy them. You shall not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their works, but you shall utterly overthrow them. You shall utterly overthrow them and completely break down their sacred pillars. He's sending them into battle. He's sending them into battle equipped. He's sending them into a promised land. He's sending them with an angel, capital A, obey him, capital H. When you see that capitalization in the word, it is Jesus. You see a capital A, the angel of God, that's Jesus. You see capital H, that's referring to the Godhead, him, he, his. That's all Jesus. So God sends the angel of the Lord. He sends Jesus ahead of them. He says, listen to him. He knows what's up. He knows how to do this. He's got your back. Obey him. If you ignore him, if you disobey him, I'm not going to do anything for him. But if you heed him, if you obey his voice, if you follow him and do what he says, then I am going to utterly destroy. I will wipe out your enemies. Your enemies, my enemies. Your friends, my friends. We're in this together, and I got this. And then God goes on to say, you shall not bow down to their gods, their little g's, nor serve them, but you shall utterly overthrow them. You shall overthrow them. So often we're standing face to face with our promise. We're standing at the precipice of breakthrough. We're standing right there at the door, and we see the giants. We don't even have to see the giants all the time. Sometimes we just see the shadows. We just see that little shadow. We become fearful, and we say, God, I thought you said you were going to destroy my enemy. I thought you said you were going to take care of this. I thought you had my back. And then we turn from that breakthrough and we run the other way. We let fear guide us. When you're at that doorway, when you're at that precipice, when you're at that point of breakthrough, it is then that you need to push the hardest, because God says, you shall utterly overthrow them. You will defeat these enemies. But I got this. Go in swinging like a madman. It doesn't matter. The fight is already won. You've already got victory. He already took care of this. If you're in alignment with him, if you're in alignment with Jesus, if you're following his word, if you're listening to him, if you're obeying him, then God's got the rest. If he says go in and do some whooping, then go in and do some whooping. You got it. You have nothing to fear. He's got you. He's got you. We are called to overthrow. We are called to defeat. In fact, in Genesis, when God said, let us create man in our image, created in the image of the Trinity. Remember, I've said that before, created in the image of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. When he said, let us create man in our image, let them have dominion over all the earth. Over everything. Let them have dominion. Let them overtake it. Let them dominate. The devil was on the earth. He was in the Garden of Eden. God didn't say anything about let them dominate the earth except for their enemies. He didn't say let them dominate the earth except for the serpent. He didn't say let them dominate the earth except for that lying deceiver. He said let them dominate the earth, period. Dominion. Absolute rule. It does not say to sit back and fret while I destroy, while God destroys your enemies. It doesn't say to sit there and worry, man, come on, God, get in there. Give him a left, give him a left, give him a right, uppercut. Come on, God, you got this. We're not his cheerleader. We're not in there hiding in his corner. He said, go in and fight. He said, go in and destroy. He said, go in swinging. Too often we focus on our trials, our worries, even our dreams. And we focus and we are concerned with it so much that they grow bigger than our image of God. And before we know it, we have laid God on the altar of worry rather than worry on the altar of God. And I know that I'm talking to the choir right now. I know that I have been guilty of that more than one time. I look at whatever it is. I look at my dreams, my hopes, my desires, my worries, my concerns. And sometimes that begins to grow because what you focus on, whatever has your focus, will grow. And we focus on it so much. And then pretty soon we're laying God out on this altar of worry when it should be the other way around. It should be the other way around. We should lay our worries. We should lay our cares. Lay your dreams on the altar of God. He's going to hand it back to you bigger and better. It starts with small compromise. The little choices are covenant, as I said, with the Hivites in your life. You may walk past that forbidden tree 100 times without incident. You may walk past that forbidden tree and just say, man, that's a nice looking tree right there. And then one day, you say, maybe I'll just stop. Maybe I'll check this tree out a little bit. And you smell the blossoms on a low branch. And it smells sweet. That aroma gets into you. It smells sweet. And you walk away thinking about what a sweet-smelling blossom that was. And it's on your mind and it's in your head. And you start tasting the sap on your fingers. Oh, and it's good. It tastes good. It smelled sweet. And before you know it, that innocent little sniff of that blossom, you're in your kitchen baking pies. You're not tasting the apple. You're cooking up pies. You're passing them out to the neighborhood. You're hanging out with your friends. You're all in now. That small yielding to the Hivite is covenant. And soon you're moving in. You're marrying the compromise. And you're setting up altars of your own desires. We become our own gods. Before we know it, we've drifted so far on our sea of self-indulgence that the shoreline becomes a distant memory. Hold on to the promise. The word says when you possess the land. It doesn't say if you possess the land. It doesn't say you might possess the land. It doesn't say good luck possessing the land, buttercup. It says when you possess the land. Stay true. Listen to the instruction of the Lord. Just because the temptation is there does not mean we must succumb. Just because the temptation is there, just because the giant looks big, it does not mean that we need to compromise. Hold tight. Keep your hand to the plow. Keep on fighting. I love it when David is going to face his giant, when David is going to go face Goliath. He has this conversation in 1 Samuel chapter 17. And Saul questions David. He says, you can't take this giant. Have you seen him? You're not equipped. You're not going to be able to beat this dude. David knows better. And I love this part so much. I didn't catch it until a couple weeks ago. Exactly what David's response is here. David said, your servant used to keep his father's sheep. And those little couple of words really kind of got me. David's talking to Saul. Saul's saying, man, you can't take this giant. He's huge. Dude's almost 10 feet tall. He's going to step on you. He's going to wipe you out. He's got this fight. You have no hope. David says, your servant used to keep his father's sheep. Now, what's interesting about that is, David's still a shepherd, am I right? David is still a shepherd. But he's speaking to his identity. He's speaking to his destiny. He said, I used to be a shepherd, but today I'm a warrior. I used to be a shepherd, but today I'm a king. I used to be a shepherd. I used to keep the sheep. Today I'm a victor. When the lion and the bear came, I took care of business. When the lion came, I grabbed him by his beard and I ended him. When the bear came, there was no more bear. And this Philistine, he's no different. No different than that little bear. No different than that little lion. Remember in Judges, we read that those nations remained so the ones who had not tasted war could learn. The immune system is strengthened by fighting. The boxer improves through struggle. David cited his past battles as evidence of his enemy's imminent defeat. And we do the same thing. When we come up against our Hivites, when we come up against those giants, when we come face to face with our promise, but there's a giant there blocking us, we've already struggled once or twice in our life at least, and we can go back to that time and we can say, I've already overcome this temptation. I've already faced this temptation. I've already battled this. I took care of business then. I'm going to take care of it right now. This giant has no dominion over me. This giant has no business being between me and my promise, because that's my promise, not the giant's promise. That promise doesn't belong to anybody else. God gave it to me, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to have it. I will have my promise. We have to go in with that mindset. We have to go in as being already victorious. We have to go in like David went in. David went in and said, yeah, you're kind of big. I'm coming with God. We have to go in with that mindset. We have to go in with the mindset that God has already given us dominion. Yes, he's sending us into a promised land. And yes, there are giants there. But he's not going to send us to be defeated. He's going to send us so that they can be defeated. He's going to send us so that we can see how big he is. I used to always wonder when I first got saved, I'd start going through trials, and the people discipling me at the time would say, you're going through a trial. God's testing you. I'm like, why? He knows I'm going to fail. He knows I'm going to fail miserably. And they really didn't have an answer. It's not their fault because we were all young back then. But later, I began to realize that in school you take a test. And the test in school has two purposes. It tells your teacher that they're doing their job well. It tells your teacher where their student needs improvement. But it also tells the student how they're doing. God tests you. He knows the outcome of that test. He knows that you're capable of passing. He knows that you're capable of overcoming. And he knows whether or not you're going to overcome. You go through the test anyway to show you. You go through the test anyway so that when you look back, whether you succeed or not, you're going to say, man, God was right there all the time. The test is to show you God. The test is to strengthen you. The test is to prepare you for your next battle, for your next giant. Yeah, you knocked this giant down. The next one might be bigger, but it's okay because you already took care of this one. Goliath was bigger than a lion. He was bigger than a bear. Average, big grizzly is about 9 feet tall, pretty close in size, but Goliath was bigger than the bear. David wasn't worried about that. Neither should we. We shouldn't worry about the size of the giant when we're focused on the size of our God. Deuteronomy 7, chapter 7, verse 1 and 2. Remember, the word says when God brings you into your promise. When the Lord your God brings you into the land you go to possess, and has cast out many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when the Lord your God delivers them over to you, you shall conquer them and utterly destroy them. There it is again, utterly destroy. You shall make no covenant with them or show mercy to them. When the Lord your God brings you in. When the Lord your God delivers them to you. When the Lord delivers them to you. When the Lord brings you in. We get in this trap of standing face to face with that promise. We're almost there. I've done it way more than once, and when I look back sometimes years later, I realize that I was right there. One more step in the right direction, I would have had it. I would have already accomplished it. These are learning experiences, but when you're right there, when you're at that precipice, when you're feeling like giving up, that's when breakthrough is going to come. When you're feeling like dropping your fist, when you're feeling like dropping your hands, when you're feeling like putting your sword down, that's when breakthrough is going to come. That's when breakthrough is most likely next to you. That's when breakthrough is on its way. It's on the horizon. You can taste it if you try. Breakthrough is right there. Just swing one more time. One more time, and when the blood starts to drip, when the sweat starts to flow, when your arms start to ache, when you're battle weary, when all you want to do is lay down and take a nap, swing one more time. When the Lord God brings you in, when the Lord delivers them over to you, you shall conquer them, not you might conquer them, and utterly destroy them. You shall conquer them. You say, I've been fighting for a long time. I heard God promise me, but I'm still fighting. He's God. Why can't he just do a Thanos and snap his fingers? Why can't he just wipe everything out? Why can't he just take care of my enemies once and for all? I can live a happy life. I can go fishing on Sunday because I no longer have to come and learn about how to fight my enemies. Why can't he just take care of it? Because he's a good father. Because he's a good father. If I stepped in and I fought every battle for my son, if I stepped in and shielded him from every danger, when he got out into the real world and his eyes were open to the fact that, man, it's tough out here, it would not have been fair for me to shield him like that. And it's not fair for God to shield us all the time. It's not fair for him to eliminate our enemies at the snap of a finger. It's not fair for him to spare us from tribulation. It's not fair for him to spare us from having to go through some stuff. The things that I went through, the things that you've gone through, somebody else out there has gone through the same thing. You're going to touch people in your life that I will never encounter. I'm going to touch people in my life that you will never encounter. And we're going to be able to have this connection because I'm going to find out something about their life. I'm going to find out something about their dreams, hopes, desires, struggles. You're going to find out the same thing. You're going to learn about somebody's struggles. You're going to learn about somebody's dreams. And you're going to say, yeah, I'm right there. And then they might answer you. I've got friends who have conversations with me, and they might answer you, yeah, but it's easy for you. It's easy for you because you're already all shiny and pretty. You already have life all together. No, I don't. God just does a good job of cleaning me up after I mess up. Amen. And we have to tell people, we have to be able to tell people and steer them so that they don't avoid their promise in the name of avoiding a couple of giants. There are promises to be had. There are promises and victories to be had. And some of the greatest promises, some of the greatest treasures that you're going to harvest are going to be when you walk somebody through that door and get to watch them take their promise. When you get to walk with somebody and say, man, I've been through this already. Come with me. I'll show you how I did it. I'll show you how to get through. I got you. We're all here on different levels of our walk, different phases in our development. We've been through different things. Together, we should be unstoppable, absolutely unbeatable. We should be the strongest army on the planet. We shouldn't be able to be touched. The enemy's going to come. He's going to try. The giants are going to come in. They're going to try to show you how big they are. And they're going to try to show you how it's not worth it to get to your little promise because you have to go through them. The giant's got another thing coming because we have an army. We have an army. That fellowship that we get to enjoy every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night, every time we get to have, whatever it is, from taco night to a potluck to a women's gathering or whatever it might be, those fellowships that we get to enjoy, that's the gathering of an army. It's not us getting together and drinking too much coffee and having too many sweets. It's not us getting together and bad-mouthing each other in the sake of a couple of good jabs. It's way deeper than that. It's the gathering of an army, and the sooner we realize that, the sooner we're going to be able to step into our victory. I'm not going to lie. I mean, sometimes I've gone to those events tired. I'm like, man, here comes Tomas again. So, but it's good for us. We get to engage in this interaction. We get to engage with each other, and we get to build each other up, and we get to see where each person has come through. We get to say, man, I remember when you first came into this church. Look how far you've come. Let me encourage you for a minute because you're facing this giant right now, but don't forget where you came from. Don't forget the lion you already fought. Don't forget the bear you already beat. Don't forget the mountain you already climbed. This is going to be no different. This is going to be no different. You got this. And then when I'm struggling, you're going to come alongside me and you're going to do the same thing. Man, remember that bear? Not a problem for you. This right here, this is nothing. This is little. I can see it from where I stand. I can see your horizon, and it looks good. The coast is clear. Your future is promising. Your destiny is bright. And we encourage each other like that. We encourage each other through our giants. We encourage each other through our trials. And we celebrate with each other through our victories and through our dreams. Exodus 23:7-33 says, I will send my fear before you. Man, I like that. I will cause confusion among all the people to whom you come, and will make your enemies turn their backs to you. If you've ever been in a fight, you don't turn your back on the one you're fighting. I will send hornets before you, which will drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, the Hittite from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field become too numerous for you. Little by little I will drive them out from before you until you have increased and you inherit the land. And I will set your bounds from the Red Sea to the sea Philistia, and to the desert and to the river. And I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you. You shall drive them out before you. And remember, he said previously, you shall utterly destroy them. You shall overtake them. You shall dominate them. You. But God's going in before us. Amen. You shall drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. And we go back to that. Man, God, I've been fighting for a long time. I'm tired. I don't think I can swing one more time. I've been fighting for a while, man. You promised. Remember, back in March 2018, you promised me. You said it was the year of a harvest. You said harvest was coming. You said victory was mine. Where is it, God? I'm getting tired. I've been fighting for a long time. God says, I'm going to drive them out, but it's not going to be in a year. It's not going to be in a short time. I'm not going to do it right away because it's going to become too much for you. The beasts of the land are going to be too much for you to contain. The land is going to be too much. The harvest will be too plentiful. You won't have enough to contain it. So I'm going to drive them out little by little. I'm going to help you defeat this enemy. I'm going to help you defeat your giants, but it's going to be a little at a time. It's going to be one here. It's going to be another there. And we're going to go little by little. We're going to go one by one. We're going to go step by step. And together we're going to do this. But you're going to drive them out. When you inherit that land, when you possess it, when you step into your dream, we have to be active members of our lives. And I know people say a lot of times, God helps those who help themselves. I've read this cover to cover a number of times, and it doesn't say that in there. But we do have to be active participants in our life. God says, you will drive them out. You will utterly destroy them. You will possess your land. You're going to step in. It requires us to move. It requires us to step in. It requires David to step up to the plate and fling that stone. It requires us to step out of the boat and walk on that water. It requires us to overcome the waves. It requires us to throw this first stone. It requires action on our part. You know, we always want it right now. We live in such a right now time. If my coffee's not hot in the microwave in 30 seconds, I'm ready to pitch a fit. We want it right now, but there's a process and we have to wait. When we have increased, when we have taken possession of the promise, then God will drive our Hivites out. He most often requires action from us. Even when it looks like the odds are against you, you are called to take dominion. That's like the first command. Be fruitful, multiply, dominate the earth. Rule. Action precedes action. And this is another familiar passage of scripture to everybody, I'm sure, and I've always thought about this. Because it's when Jesus feeds the 5,000. I'm like, man, he's got 12 dudes passing out food for 5,000 people. That's a lot of fish. These guys either better be huge or they recruited some help. But this is what I think happened. Jesus, and you can look, it's not in here like this. Jesus takes the bread and the fish, and he breaks them, and he gives thanks. Then he gives it back to the disciples, and he says, feed these 5,000 plus people. They're standing there. They're standing there with a couple of fish, 5 loaves. And I'm sure, I would have been like, okay. But they had to take action. They had to take action. They had to go out and they had to say, okay, I got 2 fish, I got 5 loaves, you said feed them, I'm going to feed them. I'm certain the disciples didn't pass out a crumb and a half of a towel to everybody either. Because it says they ate as much as they wanted. So they passed out heaping platefuls to 5,000 plus people, plus women and children, until everybody was full. And then they pick up 12 baskets of leftovers. Jesus didn't pass out. I don't believe Jesus gave the disciples 5,000 fish to pass out to everybody. I don't think that he handed them back the multiplication. I think he gave them back what they gave him. But something happens to that when it's in the hands of the master, when we relinquish our goods to him, when we place our little in the hands of the master. That young boy's lunch became a feast. And then he hands us back our dreams. And we're looking at it going, man, it doesn't look like much, God, but I'm going to go on what you said. I'm going to step into action with this. And then when we step into action, then it begins to grow. Then it begins to multiply. Then that dream begins to prosper. Then that dream begins to become so much bigger than the giant that we look at it and we say, what giant? This little pipsqueak? nothing. I got him. If you can kick him over the fence, he's not a giant. When God says move, we move. He said he's sending his angel before you. Capital A. Be mindful of him. Take heed to what he says. If you do what he says, your enemies will be my enemies. Your enemies will be my enemies. I'm going to go ahead of you, and I'm going to fight. I'm going to pave the way. I'm going before you. You don't have to worry about your giants. When the spies went to spy out the promised land, they came back saying, man, there were giants there, and we looked like grasshoppers to them. Well, of course you looked like a grasshopper to them. That's how you saw yourself. You ever see that picture online of a little kitten looking in a mirror, and there's a reflection of a giant lion staring back at him? That's the way I like to imagine myself. That's the way I like to see things now. I don't care what the image says in the mirror. Mirrors are notorious liars. Mirrors they're liars. I'm telling you, don't believe one thing that your mirror says. You are a giant slayer. You are a victor. You are victorious. You are a champion. And all it takes to realize that is to step into your championship role. We're all here. We're all in the fight of a lifetime. The odds are stacked against us right now. Especially right now. Especially in this day and age. Especially in this day. You watch the news. I turn the news off half the time. You watch the news and you see the things that are happening now on a daily basis. And we seem like we're outnumbered. God seems to like those odds. God seems to like those odds. Look at Gideon. Just a couple hundred guys and some clay pots and torches. They went to battle. They stood up and acted on what God said. They were obedient. They were obedient to the point where their enemies defeated themselves. When you step into the battle that God says you've already won, you're going to step in. Your enemies will defeat themselves. Your enemies will get out of your way. They're going to turn their back on you. They're going to run. They're going to run from you. Chase him down. Utterly destroy him. Keep that enemy from resurfacing, from coming back. That was the problem the children of Israel had. God would more than once say, I want you to go in. I want you to wipe out this nation. Don't leave anyone standing. Don't leave a tent untouched. Don't leave a cow alive in the field. Don't leave anyone alive. And they'd spare a couple of people. They'd take a little treasure. They'd do something. They'd let the enemy live. And we do that too. It's easy to read the word and say, man, they're silly. Why would they do that? God said to destroy everybody. We're not fooling anybody. We do the same thing all the time. We do the same thing all the time. We get just victorious enough. Just victorious enough to squeeze around the corner past the giant into our promise, only to have to face that giant again. God tells us to utterly destroy. He tells us to go ahead and face that giant. Don't forget the bear you already fought. Don't forget the lion you already defeated. Don't forget the mountain you already climbed. You got this thing. You got this thing. The Hivites in our lives are anything that we set up to allow to look better than God, to allow to look better than Almighty, to allow to look better than who God says that you are. Every time we set that up, we're entering into covenant, and that's where we defeat ourselves. That's where we defeat ourselves. That's when we give the enemy power, because we've entered into this agreement and said, okay, you're victorious over me. I don't get to step into that promised land and possess it. I'm going to close up. I want to pray for everybody. I want to speak over you. If I can, I want to speak over you. I want to call out what you are. I want to call it as God sees it. I'm not going to call it as I see it. I'm not going to call it as you see it. I want to call it as God sees it. And as God sees it, you are his children. The child of a king is a prince. The child of a king is royalty. As God sees it, you are royalty. Royalty. And then you're a royal priesthood. Priest. Kings and queens, every one of you. Priest. Dominant priest. Champion kings. Victorious warriors. There is not a person in this room facing a battle that God cannot and will not see you through. And if you need somebody to fight with, we are here. Half of us used to scrap in the street, and we're more than happy to stand next to somebody and scrap right now. Don't act like you still don't like to fight a little bit. You guys are victorious. I say it in the name of the Lord. I decree it right now in Jesus' name that you are victorious. That giant you're facing, you're going to begin to see it for its true size. You're going to begin to see that giant for its true station in life. You're going to begin to see your promise as it truly is. Yours, your possession. You're going to position yourself. You are poised to take possession of the land. You are poised to step through that door, step over that threshold, and dominate the enemies in the land. You're called to utterly destroy the giants in your land. I decree in the name of Jesus that you are victorious and that you believe you are victorious. And if you have trouble believing it, go stare at your lying mirror and envision yourself as that victorious lion. My mirror lies to me all the time. It says I'm getting gray hair. I don't believe a word of it. Does anybody have any kind of questions, comments, anything to add? She'll bring you a microphone.
You're talking about championship, and I remember a long time ago that I was able to see a heavyweight champion getting ready for a fight in Tokyo. And I went and watched him practice. And when it was over, the guy that he was sparring with, who happened to be the California state champion, heavyweight champion, came out and said, "What did I say to make him so mad?" Because he brutally beat him up, getting ready for the fight. And then he went to the championship fight in Tokyo and won in 2 rounds. Knocked the guy out in 2 rounds. That was George Foreman. But when we're fighting, even if it's a test, go all out like George Foreman did.
Amen.
And
Yes.
you'll win the championship.
Amen. Yeah, fight like every fight is life and death. I think it was Abraham Lincoln or somebody, correct me if I'm wrong, said that if he had 8 hours to chop down a tree, it's been 7 hours sharpening his axe. It's all in that preparation. It's all in preparing. Anybody else? Nobody? Okay, remember when you're facing your giants through the week, and you're going to face them, you're going to leave here, you might feel a little bit victorious right now, but something's going to raise up. Something's going to pop up. I don't know about you, but when I leave church, the first thing to pop up is that traffic. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm waiting for the boy to learn how to drive and get his driver's license. He can drive me. But when something pops up, when something steps into your face, when something tries to step into your ring, give it the fight it's asking for. Go ahead and give it the fight it's asking for. And there's no shame in tasting the mat. George Foreman tasted the mat a couple of times, I assure you. There's no shame in getting knocked down. It's not how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get back up that counts. Amen. Thank you guys so much. Bless you. I pray over you. Have a peaceful week, Father. Bless everybody here. Bless them throughout the week. Give them strength in their battles. Give them victory in their battles. Give them strength of the rest of the week and traveling mercies on the way home. In your name, amen.